I don't think you ask me the right questions. I don't think you're focusing on what is being told. Firstly, I'm going to start by doing a bit of a disclaimer because I'm sure a lot of people are going to see the title and then get a little bit upset. But yes, this week I'm going to be talking about religion, which I know is a very touchy subject, and I am going to be doing it from my own perspective. So it is my opinion, as I always state. It's my opinion. I do some research. I don't do a whole week worth of research. I don't do the kind of research that takes weeks to complete either. It's literally, I find a topic that interests me and I do some research. I will upload the links to the videos that I used for my research when I post the highlight reel thing. And yes, so this week I watched a documentary on Vice about this heavy metal band called Gorgoroth, and particularly about their lead vocalist Gol. And Gol is not of a conventional religion. I don't know if I can mention his religion on social media because sometimes it does get blocked, but it's kind of the opposite. People see it as the opposite of Christianity, so there's that part of it. So in this video that Vice is doing, this interview with Gol, he mentions a few very interesting things. Number one is he muses on the fact that Christianity is basically a capitalist-driven religion. So I will continue further on these topics, please note. It's just that I want to kind of touch on the topics as they came up to me, and then I'm going to go on to a description closer to the end based on like the research that I did to kind of like strengthen the thing. So Christianity is based on capitalism. The main thing for this is that when you look at a church-going society and system, usually what you have is this building that you go to where you have to pay to worship God. And the thing that makes this a very opposing topic, obviously, is that quite a lot of people in this world don't see it that way, especially the people who do subscribe, can't do words, to Christianity. But the thing is, a lot of money that goes into the church. Yes, they have some charitable things that they do. They are also not taxed on anything that they earn. So yes, it is very much, I don't want to touch on that too much right now. The next one is, the next thing that he mentioned was the whole mythology of what they're relating their topics to. So when you look at the Christian religion, for example, they like to call their followers their flock, referring to sheep. So sheep in general, in terminology for all people around the world, is usually referred to as followers, people who follow the lead of someone else. Whereas in Gol's religion, for example, the one that I'm not sure if I can name, they kind of associate themselves with the goat quite often. Apparently, this is also an image given to them by the Christian religion, which is quite interesting to me. But yes, so this is where like the first kind of like oppositional side of the two come in, because when you look at the flock, the sheep, they're associated with followers, where when you look at the goat, for example, that is more associated with independence and being super stubborn. And this is where the topic starts to kind of like mull in my brain, because he does go on, and then he starts mentioning things about how they don't care what you look like, they don't care what you are doing, they kind of speak to everybody as a person. And then the big thing that got me was the fact that in Christianity, people believe in like this monotheistical God, this like overlord figure, whereas not just in his religion, which still again, I don't know if I can say, but yes, so in his religion and many other religions, they kind of believe in the God in yourself. They believe in the God of nature. They believe in how nature drives a force within every single human being, and that nature, that force that builds up inside of you, that is God. Like, you don't have okay, there are obviously monotheistic, there are like I can't remember the word, but like for a lot of deities, there are a bunch of different religions, and like some of them do have figureheads in their religion, like people that you need to be subservient to and to kind of like bow down to. But it's interesting to me that a lot of the older faiths, before people changed it into a theistical faith, it was very much more focused on the sense of focusing on what nature wants, living by the laws of nature. And that's like a big part that I'm going to come to later. I'm just still kind of like trying to get through this interview with Gall. The other thing that he really, that he said that kind of also sparked this, which is like the last point I want to reach on before I start talking about the actual interview. Another thing that he touched on was the fact that if you wish to be bad, if you're a person that chooses bad action, you're a person that chooses to do things that are not quintessentially good, then you therefore will always end up kind of like stirring this inside of others. He kind of referred to it as like a bad seed will kind of like germinate and destroy those around it. And it's interesting that he also mentions that people like this, to them, it is almost a sin to say no, because by saying no, you're going against what they want. And to them, what they want is like literally the only thing that they actually care about. So now, like, to get onto the whole interview for what it was, the guys from Vice went to Norway to go and interview Gall. And while they were there, they went to where he lives, which is quite off the grid because he prefers to be in solitude, to be in nature, to be away from the populace and the craziness of humanity and all those things. And literally, it's a, I don't want to lie to you, but it's like not even an hour long interview. And most of the interview is the people from Vice complaining. And this is the part where it gets very, very interesting for me, because the complaints that they had were things like the fact that Gall didn't have plumbing inside of his house. So if they could, like, he very much did have facilities for them to do all of their business. It just wasn't a conventional, comfortable Western sense of way. So they were complaining a lot about that because at the point that they got there, it had been raining for 72 days, like straight. And the ground was super slick, super muddy. I mean, it's Norway, it's in the winter, it's snowing in between the rain. So it's just this like slush that you're like slushing about in. And they were really complaining about this because they had to walk to his brother's house, who had working plumbing and all those kinds of things. And then like that was one of their big complaints, and it just breaks my brain. And the fact that like it was so far from civilization, like that really got them. That kind of like fudged with their brains. But again, like I said, they didn't have to walk to his brother's house. He did have facilities. He just didn't have comfortable westernized facilities. So that was like a big thing in this interview. And it frustrates me because Gol touches on a few really important things when they're there. For example, the one thing that he does is he refuses for them to ask him journalistic style questions. He chooses for them to partake in adult beverages while, guys, this moderation stuff is really difficult. Anyway, they partake in adult drinks, and he invites them to put the camera on a tripod. And then they kind of just hang out and like whatever comes up, but he doesn't want like a scripted interview, which I thought was really cool, because you really do get to see a deeper side of Gol because of this in the moments that you actually see the interview with Gol. Because as I said, a big part of this interview was kind of like condensed around what the Vysians were experiencing. And then the one thing that like got me is that like the main topic that Gol keeps pushing on is the fact that there are the sheep, who are the followers, the flock, and then there's the independent goat figure, the people who dare to ask questions, the people who don't listen for an answer, they listen to find a question. And that to me is also like a valid thing for communication today, because people nowadays, they don't listen to understand, because when you listen to what someone's saying to understand what they're saying, you're listening for questions, because the only way you're going to understand what someone says is by asking them leading questions based on what they're saying. Whereas that's not quite what the guys from Vice was doing. They were literally trying to get I don't even know what to call it. They were just trying to really get information out of him for shock value, and they weren't really focusing on what he was saying or trying to understand what he was saying. They were just trying to kind of paint him as this dysfunctional person because of his image for the band Gorgoroth. And it was very interesting to me, because then they were waiting for the rain to pass, because Gol really wanted to take them on this walk. But he would not, like, they were there for 3 days at that point before they could take the walk. And he kept mentioning wanting to go on this walk. And they were just getting really frustrated because, like, he wouldn't tell them where they're going. And he ends up taking them on the walk on the 3rd day, which was 75 days of rain. Like, it was 75 days of rain up until the day where they actually were able to take the walk. And then the only reason it wasn't raining that day is because it was like a mild blizzard style snow. And it was far. It was far. I'll give them that. But then they complain again because they didn't bring boots or jackets or anything like that along for the walk, or the fact that it was Norway. They came to Norway without boots or jackets to a place that they knew were going to be off-grid living. So to me, that was a bit silly. But anyway, so then they're doing this walk with Gol. And here and there, they'll like show little snippets of someone talking to him. And again, just him reiterating the fact that like nature is powerful. He also speaks about this encounter that he had with people constantly coming onto his land. And then there was this insane court case against him because of what he did to one of these gentlemen. Like I said, I will upload a highlight reel at the end of this to my profile. I'll put all the links in there because there's a lot of things that I can't say because of moderation things, but you can go watch this interview on YouTube. As I said, I'll just add the link into the description caption thing when I do the highlight reel afterwards. But yeah, so there was this court case. Again, just that was quite insane, but I cannot tell you anything about that because it was really bad. But yeah, so they keep going on this walk, this massive walk. Eventually, it's like literally snow raining. It's like ice raining because it's Norway in the winter. And what happens is that these guys are just complaining, man. They're just complaining. And they get to this point where they're just ready to give up on everything. And the one guy's actually asking the other guy, like, why are we doing this? And they're like, no, we think we should turn back, and like all this thing. And they're like, yeah, but we've made it this far. And he said there's something really special on the other side, and we have to keep doing this. And so they push through, and they get to where Gaul was taking them. And where Gaul was taking them was to the very top of this kind of like mountain cliff thing. And it was the house that his parents built and that he grew up in with his parents. And they were kind of disappointed because to them that wasn't very special at all. But where it becomes really special to me is the fact that the whole time he's talking about this flock versus goat thing, and they literally just followed him, no matter the fact that they didn't know where they were going. They didn't know what they were going to get at the end. They just followed him because he said it was going to be good. And that takes me back to the line I opened with. I see a lot of people have joined since then, so you probably didn't hear it. But the line that I opened up with, and I want to read this because it's quite special, is, I don't think you ask me the right questions. I don't think you're focusing on what is being told. And then he says this to this man who literally, he was just, it frustrates me so much because he was literally spending all of these days. I think they were there for a total of 5 days. For 5 days, this man is just explaining to them why he is the way that he is and what he believes. And this is like the last question they ask him in the whole interview. And they're asking him, they asked him something along the lines of, I can't even remember what the question was now. It's ridiculous. But yes, the point is they asked him a question. He told them, like, I don't think you're listening to me. And this guy, without batting an eyelash, tells him, guide me. Then guide me. And then the last, say, 5 minutes of the video is just Gaul sitting there with his face just in utter disbelief and defeat. You can see that he's just like, this guy does not notice what he just said. Gaul has been for 5 days telling this guy, Tim has lit up all gifts in the gifts gallery. I don't know what that means, but thank you, Tim, for that. I don't know what that is. I'm sorry, guys. I'm still figuring this out. And trying to stay focused because I have mad neurodivergent skills. So, yeah, but it's just like, for 5 days, he was telling this guy about the whole fact that you shouldn't follow. You should think for yourself. You should be like the goat. You should be independent. You should be stubborn. You should be asking questions. You should be curious about life. And this guy, when he says that you're not asking the right questions, instead of trying to rephrase his question, instead of asking a different question, he literally says to this man, guide me then. So like, he's just being a sheep, and it's just frustrating. But another thing that Gaul mentioned that I quickly want to mention before I start going onto the whole natural law thing, because that's like a big part of it that comes onto where religion and power are tied. But like I said, I just wanted to get through this interview with Gaul because that's kind of what inspired the research for this video. But like the one last thing that he said, and I want to read this again because it is very important to me that I get this right. As long as nature is not allowed to rule by the laws of nature, there will always be king and slave. And that's where we go onto the topic of natural law. Because natural law is this thing that kind of ties on to occultism. And people hate that word because the moment they hear occult, they think of like all kinds of horrible things. And I just want to kind of like start off this discussion by just, by the way, I'll upload a photo to show you guys the ridiculousness of my research. I don't script, I take notes, and it's ridiculous, it's stupid, it's not well done, it's beautiful in a way. Anyway, So the big thing is, what is a cult? People hear occult and they think a cult, depending on how you say, but it's not like that. It's more occult. And the word occult literally means hidden knowledge. Now, again, when you hear the word hidden knowledge, people tend to get a little bit because they're like, oh, conspiracy theory and scary things. And it's like, no. It doesn't have to be scary. It really doesn't have to be scary. It depends on who the people are involved. It depends on, like, literally people. And I think that's like a valid thing that I want to mention, is the fact that, like, when it comes to religion in general, people like to take a narrative and run with it instead of thinking about the reality of all of the religion. I'm just thinking about what happened in 2001, for example, from 2001, that like little period that I'm not allowed to talk about. So like, I'm just thinking back to that and like what happened. They took a religion, a beautiful religion with wonderful poetry, beautiful principles. Some of the most humble, beautiful people that I've ever met in my life belong to this religion. And because of a few fundamentalists, not even fundamentalists, this is literally people that took part of what is written in the lore and they just completely obscured it and turned it into their own narrative, and it went really wrong. And that's what happens a lot of times. Religion can be such a beautiful thing, but the problem is, and this is where today's topic comes in, is that people use religion as a weapon to obtain power. And this is why, like, I'm also moving away from the whole, like, what different religions thing and trying not to mention too many religious words, like names, because to me, it's not about a religion. It's about religion as a whole and how it's being dominated. Like, the whole narrative of religion is being dominated by people who seek power to control the other people who fall subservient to them. And this is where we go to natural law. So natural law, first of all, is it's knowledge, it's power, it's literally a hidden knowledge, and knowledge is power. Like we all know, we hear this all the time. There's a few really funky rave songs where people go like, knowledge is power, knowledge, like whatever. I'm not going to do that. But then to just further declare this, natural law is in no way associated to or related to Darwinism. Darwinism does not have anything to do with natural law. Natural law has nothing to do with man except for like how it imposes on man. It's not man-made. It can't be defined really. Like, okay, it can be defined, but a lot of it falls into the realm of being more subjective rather than objective. So it's like, we don't necessarily always have the way to communicate about it, because the thing is like, or is it the other way? I always struggle with these two words. But the point is, it's something that's kind of set in stone. It's something that is inherent to being born. It is something that is inherent to being allowed to exist on this planet. And I think that's like a really important part about this, is the fact that like, it is a binding and unchangeable thing. It is not something that you can change just based on how you feel about it. Yeah, we do very much have laws. We do very much have governments. And that's also, unfortunately, going to be a part of this conversation, because when you're talking about religion and you're talking about power, you've got the government involved. Any hoozles. Yeah, so this is the part where a lot of people are probably going to feel like this is a very conspiracy theory based thing, but it is not. But you are free to your opinion. That is part of natural law, actually. But yeah, so the word free will, for example, free will means guys, I'm like huckling here now. Anyway, the consequences of beings with the capacity for holistic intelligence. So it is kind of like the governed behavioral consequences. So in other words, consequences for your actions. Newton's third law, like the law of attraction, that whole thing of like what you do is what you get, like that whole thing. So it's going back onto that. And I hate the fact that I made so many notes because I just want to remember so many of these things and I only have an hour and I'm so scared that I forget something. So I'm just like focusing a lot on my notes right now and not staying on topic, and I'm so sorry about that. But the first thing that I want to say before going further on the whole natural law thing is that it is not a religion. Natural law is in no way tied directly to any denomination, to no religion whatsoever. It is just a thing that exists outside of the scope of what man can and will try to control in this world. So in that sense, whether you believe in it or not is really irrelevant to its existence. And that's where it like gets to that point of like conspiracy theory, because it's like, just because you don't want to believe it does not mean it's not true. But that's kind of the thing with like a lot of things. Just because you don't see something in a certain way doesn't mean that it isn't in that way for another person. So yes, this topic is really difficult for me because like I'm really trying not to offend YouTube or TikTok or wherever this ends up. So yes, well, it's on TikTok right now. So first of all, natural law can be called by several different nominers. It can have a lot of names. So just to cover a few of them, because like it's called moral law, cosmic law, universal law, spiritual law, law of cause and effect, consequentialism, which I kind of like a lot because I was a Montessori teacher and we do the whole consequentialism thing, so that was really cool. Karma, which we know, the golden rule, we know all of that. So now comes the point where like I can start like focusing on these a little bit less and kind of just go on my own little tangent. But like the one thing that I do want to mention before I do that though, is human rights. So human rights, a lot of people think human rights are like tied to law. It's tied to like what the government will allow you to have. But that's not how human rights work. Human rights are inherent. It's something you get just for the very little fact that you are alive. And human rights are actually a lot simpler than you realize. Okay, I'm calming down. So when it comes to human rights, all human rights are bound by a certain set of consequences. The consequences are therefore tied to harmful behavior, because there are obviously positive consequences as well, like if you help a friend, they stay your friend and they might help you at another time, like those exist as well. But the one thing I want to focus on right now before I go on my little tangent for the rest of this video is the harmful things, because a lot of things that count against human rights are actually tied to one thing, and that one thing is theft. Because when you look at human rights, and especially harmful behavior against human rights, the moment you step against someone's human rights, it's, oh gosh, there's a lot of words here that I cannot say. It is to unalive a person. It is to do bodily harm to a person. It is to unconsensually do spicy things to a person. It's theft, it's trespassing, it's coercion, or willfully lying to someone. Like, those are the big things on this one. And the thing is, like, each of those are tied to a sense of theft. And the theft in the first one is obviously the theft of life. Then it's the theft of well-being when you do bodily harm to a person. The theft of their free will based on their bodily autonomy when it comes to the grape things. then straight up theft is just property. Trespassing is the theft of security. Coercion, the free will of choice. Willfully lying is based on the theft of necessary information. So unless you are doing something like that, you are kind of always living in the realm of your human rights. And that to me is very important to know, because let me just throw this away from me because it's just messing up my flow right now. So basically, when it comes to human rights, the big thing is that whenever you do something to someone else, and it is to initiate some response in their life that they do not want, that is when things become a little bit iffy. And this is where the whole dynamic of religion and power comes in. Because people have, I'm going to jail for this one. People have created religions for the sake of controlling the masses. And then a lot of these religions aren't necessarily theistical religions, because you also have political parties acting in the sense of a religious group, because you have people solely devout to a political party, a political movement, all of these things. And what they do is, these people in power, these political giants, they come around and they decide that they are going to make these laws. And these laws are not in any way tied to natural law, because a few things, for example, like if you look at taxes, do you think that taxes is something that is inherent to nature? Do you think driver's licenses are inherent to nature? Do you think that having to pay exorbitant amounts of money for food is based on nature? Sorry, this thing is bothering me. There's a lot of things that, because the government says so, because the religion of the government says that something is what we're supposed to be doing, we therefore think that it is the correct thing to do. We always think like, oh, but you have to follow the law. That's like perfectly right. And again, maybe it's like just like my autism and like the inability to have black and white thinking that does this to me. But like, I very much believe that there are certain laws in this world that we do not need to subscribe to. We really don't need to. For example, like one big one that came up to me is the fact that we have to get driver's licenses. In South Africa, we actually have to have TV licenses as well, which is literally just the sum of money you have to pay every year to the government to have the right to have a television set in your home. Like in South Africa, we don't have the right to even purchase a television without having a TV license. And the TV license literally does nothing. It does nothing. Most people have exorbitant debts to the SABC for the whole like TV license thing. Then there's people who do drive without a license and never get caught. You get a few people who drive with licenses and always get caught. You have people who drive with licenses who get in accidents. You have people who drive without accidents who never make a crash. Licenses who never make an accident. Like, there's a point where you need to start asking yourself these questions of, is this real? Is this something that is really valuable? Because when you look at the whole thing of like paying taxes, for example, and like, please don't take me to court for this, but like taxes are supposed to be, according to what they said in the conception of tax is supposed to be money that every citizen pays to the government to then get the services to the citizens, in the sense of keeping our roads fixed, keeping public health open. There are governments who take massive amounts of taxes and they literally never even like have the healthcare systems to put it towards. And then there's other countries that have taxes, but you actually kind of do see how they use it in a very like valuable way. And that's what makes the conversation on something like law versus natural law and like how it's used to manipulate the power over people. Because the government has changed itself into a church. And most governments are not indivisible from state, from church. Because if you think about like the one nation under God thing in America, in South Africa, Congress is opened with a prayer. Even when we had the thing in 2019 that we're also not allowed to use the word of, like when we did that, in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa used to pray for the nation. And now you need to understand that like a great part of South African population are indigenous people. Not indigenous, but they're people who have religions that are other. But that doesn't, they do try to make concessions by like including as many of our 11 national languages into his speeches as they possibly can, including Afrikaans, which I do respect a lot though, because like a lot of people don't always think of Afrikaans as valuable, and ek is baie lief vir my taal. But yeah, so like but he prayed and he kept saying like God bless you, and it was just very interesting to me to see how you're speaking to a nation of people who, a lot of people here still have very tribal traditions. They still have very tribal laws. They still have their ancestral rights. And you're talking to them about a Christian God. So that was a bit interesting to me as a choice. I know that in a time of crisis, a lot of people do like grab onto religion to feel better about it. But to me, I'm starting to feel like religion is very much just another pawn that governments use in their repertoire of things to make themselves seem more likable than they actually are. Because there, like I said, there are so many laws that are governed by our world to control, not assist or help or guide. It's literally made to control. And guys, I have to let a cat in. Just give me a second, because this is frustrating me. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, now there's just chaos. I'm sorry about that. I just had to let the cat in, otherwise he's going to be very upset with me, and I don't like upsetting animals. Anyway, back to the whole thing that I was on and trying to like find some track of thought. But yeah, going back to natural law. So natural law governs that we have the right to do kind of whatever we want, as long as we don't harm other people. But then we have the government, which literally the only way they get us to consign to their laws, to follow their laws and do the things that they want us to do. It's not necessarily things we need to do, it's things they want us to do. Then they kind of like pull a whole little leaflet from a lot of organized religion in the sense of coercive control. And that, as we just found out in the natural law thing, coercive control is a form of theft and therefore harmful behavior to a human, to another person. And the moment that you're doing something that is harmful to another human being, you're literally taking their rights away from them. And no one has the right to take away the right of another person. That by definition is the whole thought process behind why we have laws. Because the way that they explain laws and the reason we have them is to help other people and help control and help, sorry, I have a doggy. It's to help us. But if you're helping us by taking away our freedom and taking away our free will, how is that help? Because only the court. Yeah, only the court will decide. Like, exactly. That whole thing, I'm hoping I understand that correctly. But yeah, only the court will decide. It's like but then they also have this whole thing about you're innocent until proven guilty. But usually by the time you get to the court, you've been painted as guilty in the media, which again, the media, just like the government, are very much tied into the same server. They're all used as forms of coercion and control. And justice for all. Yes, exactly that. Francois Van Sale. Hi there. Thank you for commenting along, by the way. So to me, it's just I don't even think a lot of these people are actually religious that are doing these things. That they're literally using the guise of religion to control a body of people who do subscribe to the religion. And then they're using, especially like back to coercive control, because the only reason you follow the law is not because you think the law is good. You eventually convince yourself that you think the law is good because in your brain you're like, okay, well, I can't do anything about it. And that's like the big problem. We have so tiny a little bit. There was this moment in the movie A Bug's Life where what was his name? The cockroach guy. He like stands there and it's after the first time Flick stood up against him, and one of the other ants, cockroaches are like, it's just one ant. And then he's like, oh, it's just one ant. So he keeps like throwing these like seeds at them, and then eventually he just opens this thing and it's just this massive seeds coming down. And he's like, yeah, it starts as one ant. And then it kind of goes on. And the thing is, like, we have all these lores and videos and things that like kind of like show us the fact that like, if we really do just stand up and try to change things, it will work, because like there are so very little people controlling this situation. There so little, the group of people controlling this situation. And we are allowing them to do this. That's what democracy is. Democracy isn't everybody gets a say. Democracy is everybody shuts the fuck up. Sorry, I can't swear on here. It does not matter what the law says. Hopefully it was unstated by the true. Yeah. So that's the thing. We don't even know. We don't even know what was like let's just look at the Bible for a second. Like, I wasn't gonna go here, but let's go there because this is about religion and power. The Bible was translated from scrolls that we found allegedly 2026 years ago. So the world isn't that old. Again, like, God, the creationists. The world isn't that old, but like that's about roughly when we discovered the books of the Bible. So we assume that's around about the time when Jesus existed and whatever. But like when you go and look at the books on the Bible, they're finding new scrolls all the time. There's books that have been omitted. You don't even have free access to a lot of the information. You just get the King James Bible that you can buy in mass print. Okay, thank you Gutenheim for giving us books, but like he also made the fact that like everybody reads the same Bible now a thing. And the same Bible is literally the first Bible that people actually started reading was in the time of Emperor Constantine. He wrote a Bible based on his awakening from the Roman faith and into Christianity. And then it kind of spiraled from there. And as the translation of the Bible we read today does very much say, it's the King James Bible. King James was not very long ago, people. This was like the time of Guy Fawkes, which like we don't even celebrate Guy Fawkes Day anymore, which is like deplorable to me. Well, deplorable. I keep with the deplorable. It's deplorable. It's deplorable to me that we don't celebrate Guy Fawkes Day anymore. Anyway, but we still have the King James Bible, which should tell you everything. Like, the anarchists lost that one. Can you not? Yeah, I can feel it coming. And that's the scary part. And it's so weird that, like, so many people choose to stay asleep. They choose not to wake up. They choose to allow this force of government to control every single aspect of our lives, to control every choice we make, to control every single thing that ever happens in our lives. And why? Because God said so. Because most of the governments we have today is because of monarchy or because of patriarchy, which, yeah, patriarchy is actually like supposed to be a king because he's the patriarch of a nation. A monarch is supposed to be a mother. I don't know how this got messed up, or am I just being an idiot? Someone Google this and fix it if I'm wrong. But to me, it's just this thing that, like, we got a church and we got a king. And the church and the king were always the same thing. And the church usually picked the king. Because if the church didn't back the king, we didn't have a king. And the king makes the rules, aka, yeah, okay, we're going to do the whole devolution. So the king makes the rules. Originally it was the church makes the rules. Then it was the king makes the rules. But like the king had to kind of like get all the rules passed by the church. So it kind of was able to be vetoed based on what the church said. Then people were like, we don't want the church, raise the government. And then we had the whole like prime minister thing, like they still have in like a lot of countries. We had the prime minister because people wanted government. And then eventually it just got to, in a lot of cases, especially when there were like a lot of wars, it just got to a case where they were like, we can't sustain having a king or queen anymore because people are just kind of like them. So then we got government, and now we have government making the choices. And it's like, oh, and then they sold us democracy somewhere along the way. And it just kind of like, from the moment we got democracy, it just got worse. Because the moment we got democracy, we suddenly again became aware of the illusion that we have free will. I'm sure most people in this world think that is true. And the worst thing about that is that free will, I am sure in concept, is plausible, but where do you draw the line when saying you have free will? Because if you think about it, free will means that nothing can stop you. Absolutely nothing can stop you. In other words, if I have free will and I decided that I no longer want... Oh, this is going to be a bad one. How am I going to word this? If I decide that this person that I interact with every day does not seem worthy of walking the same spiritual realm as me, I therefore have the right to yeet them out of existence. Like, that's free will. Like, I should not have to be stopped doing that. But I am being stopped doing that. So do I have free will? Or does the government control my free will? Because even in natural law, again, like in natural law, you have to choose whether something is inherently good or inherently bad, which I struggle with a lot because I don't have the concept of black or white thinking unless I'm really, really angry. But for something to be inherently good or inherently bad, it means that you have to take a lot of people out of the equation, because there's this beautiful little saying of what's heaven for the spider is hell for the fly. So who is correct in that situation? Yes, the spider does need to consume the fly to stay alive, but the fly would also very much like to be alive. So does the spider have the inherent right to therefore devour the fly? Or does the fly have the inherent right to stay alive no matter what, and therefore the spider ends up unalived? I think I said the wrong word a few times. I hope I don't get yeeted for that one. Anyway, but so at what point does free will come in? Because yes, in an ideal world, we would like no one to ever hurt anyone. That would be like ideal. No trauma, no fear. Just like we don't have to work. We would just have love and happiness, and like everything would be perfect, like in the days of the Dark Ages when everybody had famine. Like there are reasons that government looked like and churches looked like a good and safe reason for people to be going towards these things. Like there were times that we really, really, really were struggling on this earth. And I get it. Again, like every time I do one of these, I want people to understand that, like, I'm not trying to sell a thought here. It's just I have a lot of questions and I don't have a lot of answers. And I have just kind of started using this space to, like, let those out in. And also I'm running out of time now, so I better figure out a way to wrap this up. The big thing that I wanted to get to today is just the fact that, like, we had, since as long as we can track in written history, we had some kind of religion, and that religion was always tied to some kind of government. So therefore, religion and power on record have always been inexplicably tied. And I just wanted to ask you, myself, and everyone around us, at what point do we keep believing that religion is about spirituality? And at what point do we stop? Because the fact that the government and the church seem to be indivisible from one another, the fact that they don't exist as two opposing entities but as one, that's starting to scare me. Because going back to Gall and where I started this, and his way of referring to the church as capitalism, we have to buy God now. We don't get to just have God anymore. We get told what to believe. We get told how to believe it. Every year new ideas comes in and old ideas go out the door, and nobody gets the right to choose which are which, because the answer is always coming from somewhere above your head. Not necessarily as God, but ahead of a church, ahead of a government, ahead of something except your own. And I just want to know, I just really want to know, where will it stop? When will it be enough? When will we get to a point where we're going to realize that as long as we're okay, they're going to keep treating it as okay? And that's why people, I guess, love flocking to something. Because, and I guess that's the thing that Gall was realizing in those last 5 minutes of his video, where he was just sitting there staring into the camera, just completely gobsmacked by what was happening. It's the fact that we can't do anything to change this. We can't do anything unless everybody does that. And as bleak as it sounds, I don't know if people have it in them to do that anymore, because there's a lot of discomfort that comes with the comfort of having true free will. And yeah, as I'm ending the time, I just wanted to say again, thank you to everybody that has been here. These hours go really, really fast once I start concentrating, and it's insane to me how quickly they actually go. In the beginning, I'm usually falling around, not sure what to do, and then by the end, it's like, oh, now I have too many things to say. But as always, as last week, as I'll probably keep saying every other week, I'm gonna try to keep these around I'm gonna try to do these every Thursday around 6 GMT plus 2. That's the South African time zone. That's where I am, my local time zone. So yeah, I'll also every time post it as an event to my TikTok page. Sometimes I might be a little bit later I'm also going to back post all of the videos to my YouTube channel. So I will include a link in the highlight reel. Like, I'm also going to include the source links that I used for the topics that I discussed today, Gall's interview, and then also another interesting documentary that I used to find the topics for natural law. But it's been really interesting doing these lives. It's been really interesting seeing all the people who come on here. I love it when people comment. It's always super fun. And yeah, keep asking questions. Keep doing research, real research. Don't, like, not like me, because yes, I can do real research, but I don't. But yeah, I do love hearing what people think. Like, if you want to send me a message, that's so cool. Sorry for the doggies. They like making noise. But yeah, it's been fun. Thank you guys for being here. I hope this was slightly informative. And yes, I've got 5 minutes left, but I'm gonna sign off now. And I thank you guys. Oh gosh, there's that alarm again. I hate it so much. Oh, this time I got the puzzle piece really quickly. Anyway, that's TikTok saying goodbye on my behalf. So thank you, interhumans, for joining this live session with me. As I said, I'll include all the links in the highlight reel, and keep asking questions, okay? I love you. Bye.